Hi friends, in this section I'll be showing how to install a load balancer and configure auto scaling. So in order to do that, let me first launch a 2 EC2 instead. So I have logged into my EC2 dashboard. Let me click on launch instant, choose launch instant. Once that is done, in my example case I will be using free tier. So Amazon Alex will be chosen T2 micro. Once that is done, I'll be choosing 2 instant to install. So I will be pre-installing all the requirement here using bash. Let me paste the commands. So once this is done, let me add storage. I'll be choosing default root storage itself. Add tag. Okay, let me name. Let me give a name for my instance. Once that is done, security group. So I'll be choosing the one I have already created. So you can see that I have already allowed all the connections. So for example cases, I have used this. Most commonly, we never enable all traffic to the instant. We only need to enable the required ports and required applications protocols in this section. Once that is done, let me click review and launch. Just verify everything looks okay. Once that is done, click on launch. In my case, I will be choosing KeyPair, which I have already downloaded on my system. Let me acknowledge this one. Click on launch instant. So it would take a couple of minutes. So here you can see that our 2 instant is in painting stage. So let's wait for a couple of minutes so that this get deployed and active. Once that is done, next we have to create a load balancer. In order to do that, just click on load balancer section, create a load balancer. In my case, I will be choosing application load balancer. Just click on create. Just define a name for our load balancer. Let me say learn with skill load balance. I'll be using internet facing. And IP address type will be IPv4. The protocol I am going to use will be HTTP and port 80 will be checked. So I will be selecting all 3 zones. Once that is done, let me configure security group. Here also I will be using the same security group which I have already selected. Once that is done, let me define my target group. Plan. So in case I will be using this for instant. Port 80 is used to check the status. So here let me define php dot. Let me 1 second. Okay, info.php. Let me define info.php here. So each time the load balancer will be checking for this particular URL. If this code missing, then the trickle will happen. Once that is done, let me register the target. Here you can see that the 2 instant we have deployed was showing in running state. So let me select both of them, add to register. Once that is done, let's review. Just verify the information. Everything looks okay. That is it. Click on create. And you can see that the load balancer is created now. It is in provisioning state. So we will be using this DNS name to access the load balancer. Before that, let me see my instance state. Yeah, both are running, both passed the test. Let me see if my installation is working or not. Okay, something went wrong. Let me see. For PHP, it should have loaded. Okay, let me connect to the server and see what happened. Okay, Apache is already installed. So something with my file permission. Okay, for the PHP is there. What happened to that? That looks okay. PHP minus v. Okay, PHP also looks okay. Okay, let me restart service, restart. Stupid. Service, stupid. Restart. Let me see once again. It's working or not. Okay, so I just missed to restart the Apache service once the changes are made. So let me access the second one and see if it looks okay. Most probably it will have same issue. So info.php. Okay, same issue is there. So let me try to connect the server. This looks okay. So it should work. Okay, both of them is working. So from this section we can understand the difference in EC2 instant. So once that is done, let me go back. I create an auto scaling group. So before that, let us verify if our load balance is working. So in order to do that, just copy this one, paste slash import.php. Here you can see that our load balance is also working. In first case, it's showing first instant. Let me refresh it. Just wait a few minutes. Let's see how it works. Yeah, it could change it. So load balance is working correctly. Now next step is to create a auto scaling. So in order to do that, let me click on launch configuration. So here you can create the launch configuration. So in my case, I'll be using a AMA image. For example, EC2 instant running. I'll be creating a AMA image for my EC2 instant. So let's assume the content down in this both server is same, and we have already configured in AFS or any type of file system to share the data. So in that case, let's create a AMI image and templates. Here you can see the create image, create a template for instance. So in my case, I'll be creating image, defining image, language skill AMI. Not going to give any option. Everything will be default. Once that is done, create image. So under AMI section, you can see that the image status is pending. It's been created. So it would take a couple of minutes for this AMI to get properly provisioned. So let's wait for a couple of minutes. In the meantime, let me see the launch configuration. Okay. Create launch configuration. This verifying is the AMI is already started showing. Yeah, the AMI is showing here. So let me define a name for my launch configuration. That will be a language skill AS auto scaling. Choose the AMI I have been created. Here you can define if we need to install this in a separate instance type or anything. We can choose the type here, like which one. In my case, I will be using the default one itself. Once that is done, here you can define the IAM profile. I'm not going to do anything on this. Not going to add any volume also. So in security group, I will be defining my exiting one, Docker. Once that is done, the key pair I'll be choosing my exiting key pair, which will be join video server. Let me acknowledge this one. So everything looks okay in this case. Once that is done, let me create launch configuration. One or more trigger file is missing. What is missing? Instant type. 1 second. Let me choose T3 micro in this case. Choose. Okay. Once that is done, click on create launch configuration. So the launch configuration is created. Once that is done, let's create a auto scaling group. So click on auto scaling group, create auto scaling group, define a name, language skill group. Once that is done, either we can use launch template. I will be switching to launch configuration. Selecting language skill which one I have created. Click on next. VPC. VPC I have a default VPC and a custom one I have made. I will be choosing the default VPC. In subnet section, I will be selecting all three. Once that is done, let me click on next. So I will be attaching this to the load balancer. Choose from your load balancer target group and we select one. That will be language skill. This one I have selected that one. The timeout limit will be, let's say, 100 seconds. No, let's say 16 seconds. Once that is done, click on next. My user capacity will be 1. I only need to this provision 1, minimum 1 and maximum 1. I will be setting just one additional instance that will be going to be provisioned when this auto scaling setting is being triggered. So once that is done, let me define whenever the CPU usage hits 50 or above, our instance gets deployed. So let me, once this is set, I'll click on next. If you need to add a notification, we can set it here. In my case, I will be skipping this one. Click on next. Add tag, name, CPU deployed. Insert this and next. So looks everything okay. Create auto scaling group. So just wait for a couple of minutes so it gets done. Okay, everything looks okay. Launch configuration looks okay. Image. That's to setup. That is done. Let me see what else need to be done. Okay, everything looks good until running. So 2 instance is running. So let me see if my auto scaling is working or not. In order to do that, I'm going to do a stress test on my instance. So before that, let me access this one on different terminal too. Okay, let me use my stress test. Okay, here you can use see that the CPU usage is hitting the limit. So according to our conditions, a new EC2 instance should be deployed. So let's see if it's happening or not. Just wait for a few minutes. Yeah, you can see that as soon as the CPU limits get hit, a new instance gets deployed. Just wait for a few minutes. Once the status check is completed, the load balancer should also show this new one. So let me wait for a couple of minutes so that I can show you. Just a few seconds. Yeah, I think it start to show 201. That will be, yeah, this IP 201. So the load balancer correctly picked the no instant and it's showing correctly. So this is how we set up a load balancer along with a auto scaling group.